always a difficult Sunday for us because for the last 2 weeks we have been gathered at the manger. We have been in awe of this child, this newborn. We've been in awe of the whole concept that God would become flesh. And so we have been wrapped up in the holiness of that event with angels and shepherds, magi, and we've gathered at that manger in front of that small child. And it's been a holy place to be. One of the reasons why we do Christmas as well as we do, or Christmas does us, maybe, is because if we've ever seen a newborn baby, we know what it's like. We know that there automatically is this sense of mystery and awe and holiness and divinity. Every newborn child is simply miraculous. And especially in those first hours of being newborn, it just takes your breath away that there is this new creature come from God. So, in that sense, it's relatively easy to celebrate Christmas because we know that sense of holiness. We know how awe-striking it is to be in the presence of the newborn child. And that this newborn child is the Son of God is not hard to believe. And so that sense of holiness is easy and profound. And then, less than a week later, here we are. We're at the riverbank of the River Jordan. And there's no baby anymore. It's 30 years later, and we have this kind of scruffy Palestinian male, about 30 years old, who stands there on the side of the river. Probably an unpretentious looking guy, probably very much like the others who have come to the river that day or that week, been swept up by John's message, and he chooses to identify himself with this group, this crowd, by being baptized along with them, by joining their community. The problem for us on this week is to make this transition because it requires us to grow up. It requires us to look at Christ not as this divine, innocent little child who had a rough beginning but is surrounded by angels, because we can do that. But to see God and Jesus in the flesh and blood of a 30-year-old man in a poor country, come to the banks of a muddy river. And it forces us to think more deeply about the presence of God in the world. That God isn't just in the angels and the magic of the newborn, but God is in the midst of the messy world, of the banks of a muddy river, of the ambiguity of being a part of a community. It forces us to grow up and acknowledge the complexity of this world And that it is not just a matter of newborns being born and our delighting in them. It's also a matter of war and greed and meanness. That this world is filled not just with glory, it's filled with all these dark shades as well, all these complexities, and most of all, I think, it's filled with ambiguity about what to hold on to and what not to hold on to, about the presence of God or not the presence of God, about human relationships and how difficult they are. To be a grown-up Christian is to stand in the midst of that world and worship God. To be a grown-up Christian is not to minimize the world in all its brokenness. It's not to see ourselves as the victims of that brokenness. It's not to be angry that the world is that way. It's to acknowledge that that is the way the world is. And this is the constant struggle for us, isn't it, in terms of our own spiritual lives. It's to discover our own identity and not let the world tell us who we are. Because if we let the world tell us who we are, we will be shaped by the values of the world. And you know that in the end, that will be not a good end. It is as to be an adult Christian is to discover our true identity. And how did Christ do this? Well, he went and he joined a motley community, about as motley as this one, and was baptized with them, and then discovered what he heard most deeply in his life. You are my son, says God. That's what he heard. And that's how he decided to live his life. That's where he found his identity. And he clung to that identity as the child of God for the rest of his life. And he went through all those ups and downs and dramas and excitements that we all go through in life, the moments of victory and the moments of defeat. And he held on to that identity until the bitter end. And that's what we're called to do as well. We are called to become a part of a motley community and to hear God's voice to us individually, that we are the child of God, and to grow into that identity beyond all other identities that we might have. All the identities that the world wants to put on us, politically or economically or any other way. Our identity beyond all of that is as the child of God. And if we hold to that identity above all else, to the bitter end, then we will have lived our life as fully as a Christian can live their lives. St. Paul, in that wonderful passage from 1 Corinthians about love, says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, and then when I grew up, I put away the childish things. And I became an adult. And I found that to be an adult is to know the power of faith and hope and love. And to be an adult Christian is to hold fast to our knowledge that we are the child of God, and to live boldly, fed by faith hope, and most of all, by love.